Okay, so this last section is the responsiveness using media queries, and we're going to talk about CSS hovers and transitions. If you look at our page here, it looks good, but if we were to select something like an iPhone 10, you'll see that it looks very bad. The linear gradients like cut off, the nav is off the screen. It's just unusable. Even on an iPad, it's just the logo is off the screen. It's very bad. So the way you fix that is media queries. We're going to be using max width media queries because we designed our page on a desktop first layout. It looks good on a desktop, and we're scrolling down. So the way you do it is you just kind of scroll down in the DevTools here until you find a width where things start looking a little weird. So under 800, it's not good. The logo's off the side. We have a horizontal scroll here. But even about 900, these are a little too close for my liking. I actually want to change the flex direction to column in the header, so that way Travel Pros is on top of the nav and the nav will be underneath it. So we're going to use 900 width as our first breakpoint. So at the bottom of our CSS, we'll say media only screen and parentheses max width of 900 pixels. So the maximum width that these CSS properties in these semicolons are going to take place is up to 900 pixels. After 900 pixels, it's going to go back to our default styling that we have set up. So, and keep in mind, it does use this styling as well, but if anything you change in here will be overwritten over these CSS properties because the media query comes first. So, right under 900 pixels, I want the header to be flex direction column. As you can see right now, we just have it flexed, and then we don't have a flex direction set, so it's default to row, which is why they're side by side. So on the first media query, we're going to target the header, and we're going to set the flex direction to column. And right away, you'll see now that we're under 900 pixels, it positioned these differently. It changed the flex direction to column. If I go over 900, they're at row, and then under 900 is column. So that looks pretty good actually for the first media query. The next thing you do is you continue to scroll down in size until you find where things start looking bad again. And I would say right around 700 pixels, I don't need this much spacing in between these. I'm going to lower the spacing on the LI elements because if I continue to shrink down, you'll see that they start pushing things off to the side. They look really bad. So at about 700, we will change the padding and the margin on these a little bit smaller. We'll just cut it in half. So we'll add another media query. I can actually just copy this one, but I won't. I'll actually type it out. Media only screen, and then the max width this time will be 700 pixels. So everything in this media query only takes place up until 700 pixels. Then after 700, these won't come into effect anymore. So at about 700, we want to set the header UL LIs. If we look at what they are set right now, I'll just copy the padding and margin. It's 20 pixels top and bottom, 40 pixels left and right, and the padding and the margin just has 20 pixels left and right. I'm just going to cut these values in half. I'm just going to say 10, 20, and then 10. And you'll see that they are much smaller now. So that looks a lot better. If I go back over 700, they're there, and then under 700, they're there, which looks good. Actually, I'm going to add some top margin here to give it some spacing, a little bit more spacing underneath the logo. So instead of 0, I'll put something like 20. Sounds good. Yeah, that looks good to me. Yeah, that's much better. So right under 700, everything shrinks. Boom, looks good. And that's it for that media query. If we continue to scroll down though, right about here, I would say that this font is too big for the current size we're at. Because if you scroll down, you'll see that things start getting pushed off to the side, and that's because this nav again, but also this font is just way too big. So let's use about 500, I would say. We could do less, maybe 450. Let's just keep it at 500 to keep things even. So right about here, right under 500, I'm going to add another media query. Only screen, and max width this time will be 500. And what do we want to do? We want to lower this padding and margin again by half, I guess, and shrink this font. And I think that should honestly be it. So maybe, yeah, we'll see. Let's start with the nav again. So I'm just gonna copy this, the header ULLI, because we're doing the same thing. And I'm gonna cut the padding again in half. 5, 10, and then 5. I'm gonna keep this top and bottom 20 pixels because I like that spacing. And then there you go. You can see under 500, it shrinks them again. So that looks really good. But then this font is just huge. So under the, we can target that next. That's in the content. That's the content H1. I'm actually just gonna copy it from up here. And again, we'll shrink the font size in half. We'll just go somewhere around 2.5 instead of 4.5. Maybe that's a little small. Let's do 3. And that looks good. So right under 500, you'll see that the font size shrinks. And that looks pretty good. I guess I'll make the paragraph a little bit smaller too, because now it looks bigger than the header. So the way you do that is just content P. And then we'll set the font size to like 0.9 maybe. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. And honestly, that's really it for the CSS. I mean, now if you shrink down all the way until like 300, everything looks pretty good. We check, let's say Galaxy S5, looks pretty good to me. iPhone 5, let me so you'll see the iPhone 5 320, things are getting pushed off to the side a little bit here. Let's see what the reasoning for that is. It's actually the LIs. So we can get rid of the margin altogether on these LIs on our last breakpoint at 500. We don't need the orange, the margin. We do need the margin on the top and bottom. We'll keep that spacing, but the left and right, we don't need any. So at this bottom breakpoint, yeah, we'll just set this 5 to 0. And that actually, as you can see, fixed the issue we had where it's pushing it off to the side. So iPhone 5 looks good. iPhone 6, 7, 8 look pretty good. iPhone 10 looks good. Let's see an iPad. Looks really good. iPad Pro. Notice they went back to RAW because it's over 900 pixels. So our media queries are done at this point. Everything looks good, and I'm happy with the way it looks. The next thing I want to cover is the CSS hover animations, and it's super simple. Let me close the DevTools. So we want, when you hover over, to have the background change and the text change. Same with these. We'll add a little border when we hover over them. So if we go up to our content button, which is right here, content button, I'm going to make another property right underneath it, which is the content button hover. And all I want to do is change the background color from transparent to this light blue color. So we'll just do that. Copy that in there. So now when we hover, the background color will change. But now we also have to change the color of the font, because if it's the same color, we won't be able to see it. So let's make that, I guess just black would be fine, 0, 0, 0. And that should be it. If we hover over our button, you'll see that our font changes to black and the background changes to that light blue color. That looks pretty good. One thing I want to add now is a transition. I don't want it to change color instantly. I want it to try to like kind of fade into that blue color. So on the regular content button, not the actual hover, the button itself, we're going to add a transition property. We're just going to use all here of everything. And we'll set roughly like 0.3 seconds. You can kind of change this to whatever you want. I like 0.3. It looks pretty good. You can also use milliseconds here, just by like 1,000. I'm pretty sure milliseconds. Maybe not. Don't listen to me. I'm using 0.3 seconds. And you'll see that if I fade over, it kind of fades in over 0.3 seconds. If I were to add like 1.3 seconds, you'll see now it takes a while. I don't like that though. It's too long. But you can mess around, find something that looks good for you. I'm sticking to the 0.3. I think that looks pretty good. The last thing I want to do is on the nav. I'm just going to add a border when I hover over it. So if I go to the header ULLIs here, I'm going to do right underneath it again, add the hover to it, LI hover. And all I want to do is add a border of, let's say, 2 pixels solid. And I want this color right here. There you go. Let's see what happens if I hover over them. Boom. There you go. I like that. So you'll notice as I hover over them, then they move down a little bit because the border is placed. So it pushes them down like 2 pixels. The way to fix that is adding this border to the regular element and then hiding it. So that way it's there, but it's just hidden. So that way when the border comes on the hover, it doesn't move the actual LIs at all because the border technically is already there. I'll show you what I mean. If I set a border 2 pixels, solid, transparent, then it doesn't move anymore because the border right now is actually there, but it's just hidden. So it doesn't have to add 2 pixels when we hover over it. It's already there. You just can't see it. So now when we hover, all it does is bring it up. It just shows it. So I like that. And then again, I want to add a transition. So you add that to the regular element, not the hover. Transition. And I'm going to say all 0.3s seconds. Now if I hover over it, again, as a nice little fade in effect. And that, my friends, is the end of this first section where we make a nice looking travel landing page with some cool hovers. And of course, again, it looks great on every device screen size. As we shrink down, we have things changing. So that is it for this section. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. And until the next section where we're going to make something else, I will see you there. Thanks for watching.